Okay.
Now it started again.
Should we wait for 2 more minutes and then we start? So that if anyone wants to join, they can. Hi, Sayali and Mahati.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for joining on a Sunday afternoon. I guess it's a festive mood there in India, or how's it?
Yeah, it is. But it starts in the evening, so it's kind of okay.
It's evening?
I said it starts in the so it's kind of okay. It's just afternoon now.
Yeah, okay.
If you had lunch, then you are probably going to feel sleepy, and then hopefully I don't make you more sleepy. Cool. So we have 6 of us, 7 of us, 6 of us here. We could Anirudh put out a message, but okay. No, Mythology Meets Science is Anirudh, right?
Yes, I usually join from that login. Yeah. Okay, Kalpak, I think we should start.
We should start. Okay, all right. Okay, so hope you can see me now. Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening to where you are, and depending on what time of the day it is where you are. We have been discussing on this topic of karma in different chat sessions that we are having. Thank you all for your contributions and questions. I think with that we think we should have this session in terms of I think there's enough content to last us for about hopefully 45 minutes, I would say. Let's see. And I will begin sharing my screen as well. It's disabled. Could you please enable it, Anirudh?
You mean you can't share your screen?
Yes, I get a message: host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, let me check. Can you check if you are able to do it now?
Yes, now I can do it.
Great.
All right. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Cool. So let's begin. I have made a presentation for this topic as well, like we did, like I had made for the last couple of topics that we made. Hopefully that helps to record the discussion as well as, if someone wants to read this content later on also, it's quite fine. But of course, we will have a YouTube video hopefully, so that's fine. So our topic for today is karma, a discussion, yes. And to begin with, I think we'll look at a bit of the agenda, and this is what we have for today. So first, of course, the definition, like what is karma, obviously. We'll talk of some sort of introduction to it. We'll have a look at some different definitions and things like that. We'll look at what counts as good karma. There will be some deeper understanding of how we will deal with this topic. There is, of course, this question of whether what's the difference between karma and the law of attraction. That I think has 1 or 2 slides on this topic as well. And of course, free will and fate. we have that's definitely one important topic. And then we, of course, we'll have some time for our discussions that we had talked about. We had those gunas, right? And we said we will have some discussion on those topics. So let's make this interactive. Feel free to ask questions. Please interrupt me whenever you know there's a question of a certain topic. You need not wait for the discussion session that we might have in the middle or the end. Right. So from that, I think let's start with the first misconception of karma. It's usually seen as divine retribution or punishment, right? Or it's looked as essentially a reward and punishment mechanism. It's not that. Karma is simply about consequences. God doesn't have to worry about rewarding anyone or punishing anyone. One could imagine that it's as if the God has set this universe in motion and installed, of course, the law of karma there as a kind of a regulatory mechanism, if you might call it, and then retired. And he's chilling out, he's relaxing. There is not much to do. He might take in avatars and interfere once in a while, but as such, things are going on. So I would say probably that's probably it may not be the most accurate view, but that's a better view rather than having or misunderstanding karma as a reward and punishment mechanism. That's I think the second view that we see here, God chilling out in his wherever he is and as if the universe is on its way. That's certainly a more accurate view than reward and punishment. So I think that's probably the first misconception to clear off. So there are certain basics that we should first cover. So karma consists of three basic things. Obviously, the word karma means action or work or deed. And there are three main aspects of karma, which is causality, that's cause and effect, ethics and justice, or which we tend to look at as the reward and punishment mechanism, and the rebirth. Now, all of these three together have some effect on the idea of karma, and we will look at them in a bit more detail. There are three types of karma as well. The idea essentially here is that so overall the entire scope of that the causality or the rebirth or mainly the causality, the effects, cause and effect part. There are three types of karma which we call as sanchit karma, prarabdha karma, and kriyaman karma. There's also some kriyaman karma or agami karma is also another terminology there. So essentially, sanchit karma is the sum of all an individual's past karma. So since the creation of time or since the creation of universe, whatever you might have accumulated, or I mean, in terms of if you really look at the identity part of it, which is the ego, that's another topic. We will not go into that today. But essentially, whatever life that you have in you, and whatever karma is associated with it since the creation of this universe, all that is essentially under sanchit karma. So you can imagine it as all whatever actions one has done in the past lifetimes or whatever there is, in whatever way. Prarabdha karma is the part of all this past karma for which you will face consequences in this life only. So the Prarabdha karma is limited in scope to this life. It doesn't mean that all your past karma you will face the consequences only in this. No, it may happen that at least the idea is that you might face some consequences of some past karma even in future lifetimes. So it's not that if this lifetime is the only time you have to face everything from the past, not necessarily so. And kriyaman karma also is the part which is now, of course, we are of course facing the consequences of our past actions, which we don't remember probably in most cases. But we are also doing actions right now, and we are facing the consequences of that as well. So it's not as if it's as if like it's a be all or this life is the only thing and so on. We assume time or life or nature as a continuum from the past to the present and the future. Within that, whatever set of consequences, actions and consequences we are doing in this life are the kriyaman karma. Of course, we will have future consequences of our actions today, and all that will come under agami karma and so on. But essentially, it is kriyaman karma and so on. However, all the theory that we will discuss under this topic, or even the philosophies, for example, that we have in the yoga and Advaita Vedanta and so on, or Vedanta for the example. I mean, other Vedanta is certainly one aspect, but even I mean that doesn't exclude like the Dvaita Vedanta or other philosophies. Essentially, any philosophy that you can focus on in Hinduism, I would say, is totally focused on this life. It's not that you are looking at eternal happiness in heaven or eternal torture in heaven, and everything you do today is with the fear of or in the hope of what happens in heaven and hell. So the focus is not the afterlife. The focus is not the what happens on Judgment Day, essentially, which are the Abrahamic philosophies. Essentially, the entire focus is today's this life, and how your Kriyaman Karma therefore comes into picture. It is more important than the Sanchit and the Prarabdha Karma. How you handle what you're doing today, how you handle yourself today, and how you do things in the future, or today and in the future, essentially matters really. And there itself, there's a big discussion on fate and free will, which we will come to in some time. Primarily, so looking at this, how does we saw that how does karma act upon, or what is basically karma, and we talked about it. It's basically action and cause and effect and so on. Now, obviously, nothing happens by oneself, right? We don't live in a world where you are the only, or I'm the only one actor in the world and nobody else is there in the world and so on, right? So many factors come in. If I talk to you, you listen to it, you understand some part of it, you reply and so on. Or if we are working together in a project and you are my colleagues and we are working together for something, then I do something, you do something. Then, for example, in a cricket team, someone does batting, someone does bowling, someone does fielding. Almost everyone does fielding, and someone drops a catch and they lose a match, or some takes more wickets than the others and they win the match, or someone scores more runs. So all these things create a pattern or create a collection of different karmas. So at once, everything is acting at the same time, right? We cannot say that. So in fact, just looking at it as, oh, I am facing the problems of my past, or I am facing the reward and punishment of the past, is a very, very, very narrow way of looking at things. You could face, or one could face, consequences of other actions as well. And it doesn't have to be that, it was not my mistake. So even then I'm facing all the problems and it is not my fault. Fir bhi aisa ho raha hai, ye wo. I mean, yes, that is life. You will face consequences of others' actions. They will face consequences of your actions. All of you will face consequences of completely someone else's actions. And this is exactly how it works. So, and that's exactly why this reverse pyramid essentially comes in. That the maximum part, of course, depends on your own personal effort, which is swayatna. But whatever you're doing, the effect of the others' inputs and others' efforts is also going to happen. So if you're working in a project, one is, if I'm a developer, I can't develop the entire application. I might divide it into two. The project might be divided into 3 developers. So my own effort is going to be there, but if the other guys don't do their jobs, the software is not going to reach the market, and I am going to immediately face the consequences of that decision if, for example, one developer doesn't do his development, or if a test engineer says that no, I'm not going to test, or whatever. So effort of others and inputs of others are definitely involved, and then you face the consequences of everything. Same thing in a cricket team. The boys played well, great, but the opposition played better, maybe. That definitely can happen. There are circumstances. So in here, it's the other part of things. In a cricket match, you say that pitch is not, pitch is meant for fast bowlers, or pitch help the fast bowlers more than the spinners, or the crowd was too loud, or some guy suddenly jumped on the field and interrupted the match. Well, that is actually technically in the second part, but in the third part, it might rain, or if it's a day-night match, the kind of ball you use, the kind of pitch it is. Then, for example, things like day-night matches exactly, or there's, for example, a terrorist threat. All these things are circumstances, and timing, place, like you said, the environmental aspects, institutional aspects, whether a match is supported by BCCI or ICC or not. whether it should be part of officially part of IPL or KPL or whatever PL that you might want to start. So all these factors definitely affect outcomes of things. And then this fourth part is the past karma, the prarabdha karma here. And there, of course, some aspects also come in, but these become more and more subtle. They are not so, for example, obvious. Some of them can be obvious. For example, fitness of a person, right? It could just happen that a guy has focused on his fitness for so long since his childhood or since his early youth days that today he is a very fit guy. Now, all that, I mean, I'm still talking of the past karma of this life only. But it could also happen that someone is just a talented player, and where does this come from? We don't know today, but maybe there's a factor of genes that happens, genetic advantages or disadvantages that can come in, or it could be the what we call as aptitude, the tendency, the person of a person's tendency to be, he thinks something is he for him, like playing cricket is he's a natural at it. Now, why is that? We don't know. And it could be that, you could attribute it to that mysterious prarabdha karma or whatever. And those things certainly have an effect. They definitely, impact. They may not impact in every match, for example, but as a whole, the impact is certainly there. Like, for example, we probably know why. Maybe there is some reason for why some great players are as great as they are. Or some scientists get the kind of ideas they do, right? Maybe there is some reason which is beyond the first thing, and that part is coming under the fourth part of karma, which is the past karma. And the fifth part, which is the grace of gods or Dev Kripa, for all most practical purposes, this is practically unknowable. One really can't say that how much of the prarabdha karma, like for example, can you really distinguish between the 4 and 5? Maybe one could argue that no, it's all prarabdha karma and God has nothing to do with it. One could say no. 20% is God's will, and some part of it is karma. For example, why did that person was born a man and not a woman? What kind of karma was acting there? What was happening over there, and so on. So was it God's will in that case? Probably, we don't know. I mean, nobody can really answer that question in a very confident way. So that essentially is the prime concept behind karma. So it's not really that everything you are facing today is the result of your own past life effects, and and that is exactly why it is not a reward and punishment mechanism. It's a consequence mechanism, and so many forces are acting together that we really can't say that this primarily was the cause of this happening. Our universe or our reality is not as simple as we would like to imagine it is. We like simple examples. We always like, it's human nature to get a nice answer. It's a psychological defense mechanism that we would like answers. We would like explanations for problems or even for good things that are happening to ourselves, and we would like to attribute a cause that okay, this happened and that's why this happened, or that's why I'm facing the good or bad effects and so on. But reality is not so easy, and handling that, of course, requires a certain amount of maturity and so on, which we will also come to. And today is coincidentally today is World Mental Health Day. So I think understanding these aspects are extremely important for keeping our own sanity. I think all philosophy primarily is primarily from this aspect. I think if most philosophy you look at the end of the day, the topic boils down to keeping your own sanity and keeping your own mind in a nice way, and then all the future things, the world is your oyster, then it's essentially that. So that's, I would say, probably the highest thing. There are some chat messages coming up. Let me are there questions? Please interrupt. Grace of God can be circumstances. Exactly. It may be it's really very honestly, it's unknowable. First of all, the question will start, what is God? Udhar se question shuru ho jata hai. So I mean, it's how can you differentiate between your prarabdha karma and grace of God is again a topic of theoretical thought experiment. I mean, you can go infinitely into that discussion, but as a practical answer, I don't know how much nice conclusions you might actually come up with. So yeah, so that's probably one topic. Moving on to the next slide, let me just check. Yeah, so here, we talked about so many aspects, but karma is not just limited to that much. Karma is also limited to our reality. For example, the biological laws, like why a human sperm and egg will create only a human being. What are those biological laws that are being that are influencing the process of pregnancy, if I may just call that process? Why does it only create a human being? Why don't these genes come together and create some completely different animal, or maybe a plant? Why not? Why not an animal only? So there are certain laws of the universe acting, which have come up by the process of evolution, as we today call it, or science calls it evolution. So there is a lot of information being encoded into our genes, and the way it is acted upon by the forces of nature, like food and nutrition and the environment in a womb. So all these things do make an action, and these are all completely you could probably call them under that parasity situation. That this is how the universe is today. This is how human beings are today. If 50,000 years ago we were alive, we would have been available as some ape-like human beings. But today humans are like that, and that is why today, if human sperm and egg come together, they will create a human being like today. And that's exactly what I mean by the biological mechanisms, right? And this is essentially stored karma. This is also karma. The universe is also acting. Nature is also acting on its own. So there is what we could probably call as a mind behind this universe, which is also acting, and all the universe is created based on such laws. And that is exactly where we call it as probably the karma of the universe. For us, it might be parasiti. In some cases, it might be some of it might be prarabdha karma, some of it might be devkrupa. How much is exactly how much? Like, is it 20% that and 50% that? Hard to know. Maybe someone who has a lot of insight into those kinds of things, and an evolved person, like an enlightened person, might be able to answer these questions. But for most practical purposes, this is almost academic or theoretical in nature. This answers to these such kind of questions. But certainly it is that we are acted upon by these forces which are beyond our control, or which appear to be beyond our control, and they are these are how should I say, the laws of the universe are also influencing the outcomes. So it's not just that my wish or my action is only defining the outcome. I may for example just want to pick up a ball and throw it to the moon. It's not going to happen, because the laws of physics are there, and the laws of physics influence the consequences more than my wish, what should happen. So there definitely the consequences are influenced by so many other things. That's why all these things, I think, so we'll probably come back to the more practical aspects of the karma, and there I think these quotes which I shared a few days ago on the group as well, I think there what we tend to look into, or we should be looking into more into, is exactly that if you want certain consequences, understand how they would probably occur, and do the things that are necessary to do that. So it's not just that I do something and the consequences happen, but if I want some consequences, I should do the actions which will bring those consequences. So there is a certain amount of proactiveness behind both these quotes, right? It's not how should I say? It's not about like oh destiny, oh a kind of a depressing way that no, nothing can happen. So many forces are against me and all that. How, I mean, parasthiti bhi hai, others karma bhi hai, ye bhi hai, wo bhi hai. How can I achieve my goals? It is in fact the other way around. Once you understand the mechanism of the universe, or about the systems that you are working on, then it actually you probably can influence how it will come about. So that's exactly where these topics come in. Some of these aspects which we just discussed will now start. We'll come on to those things. How do actually you work upon it? How does really this happen? So the first determining factor behind all this topic is essentially your intention. everything starts from there. That's why it's called Sankalpa. And there the idea is that, okay, first you have to, it's like your first root desire or root wish. What do you want? And then everything starts from there. Like, for example, I want to, for example, buy a nice camera for my photography or whatever, or I want to study XYZ. I want to study foreign languages maybe, or I want to get better at my programming things, or I might want to do, I want to bring out nice products into the market. Or there could be, for example, I want to solve humanity's problems in so and so way, or I want to recycle things. I want to encourage people to recycle more and whatever. So all these things, intention behind the things are the first thing, and that's where Sankalpa comes. So it's not just a wish list that I wish I would have done that, and it's not just that, or I wish everything would happen according to my way. No, it's about a more proactive, decisive choice, and that's what it means. That's what is meant by intention or Sankalpa. And then we of course think about how it can be done and so on, and we determine, we plan for it, and we act upon it. We might do it in a scrum manner, we might do it in a waterfall manner, we might do it in a completely different iterative manner, or we might just do it randomly on weekends, whatever. The way how you do it is completely up to that. And then that will have some consequences. The moment you do something, it has possibilities of different consequences and so on. In general, there are three categories that you do something and it contributes to the overall good. It produces joy and happiness for yourself and as well as for others, or it harms someone else, or it causes pain or injury or something, or it has no effect on others, but on yourself there is a positive or negative effect. All these three things are possible, or in some or the other way, all of these things in certain proportion are possible. It may not happen that only one will happen and two or three will not happen. Any of these things will happen in whatever proportion. So that is typically how the things start. And that's where you basically can start off things. Now here there are some important distinctions. For example, Vishnu Puran talks about a concept of karma, which is purely karma. It distinguishes that, says that whatever is done without attachment, or whatever is done without the expectation of result, only is karma. All other is just effort. That is what Vishnu Puran says. Similarly, it says about knowledge that whatever is meant for your liberation only is actually vidya or knowledge. Everything else is just your skill. Now, this is obviously a very high-level definition of karma. It is purely from the perspective of the liberation perspective, if I may call it like that. But of course, that does not mean that your practical aspects are completely lost. So purely, so one could probably say that if we really look from the purely philosophical point of view, then we'll have to talk of the top part. But still, there are also other aspects which we talked about in our way, that there's something that doesn't exist in our reality today as far as this universe is concerned. Maybe there are multiverses where other possibilities are happening, but in our universe, on which planet we live and in the reality that we live, Krutanash and Akrutabhyagam, these things cannot happen. What is the first? Krutanash is, I will do whatever actions and I will be free of the consequences. Kuch nahi hone wala. Main kuch bhi karu, no parinam. That will not happen. It is impossible. In our reality, this doesn't happen. And second is Akrutabhyagam. That means I will do nothing, or I may have not done anything, but I will experience the misery or the happiness and face the consequences of those, even if I do nothing. So that is also not possible. So just like you have action, which is karma, there is also inaction, which is karma, and even that will have consequences. It's not like if I do something, nothing. If I don't do something, I will avoid the consequences. No, that also will have some effect.
Kalpak, I have 2
Yes.
points here.
Yes.
One is from the Vishnu Puran quote, that shlok, where where it's mentioned that only karma which does not create bondage is karma, and anything other is effort. But why
Effort.
you have put in bracket pointless? Why it's pointless effort?
Because it will not lead to liberation or moksha.
Okay.
That's the only differentiation. So that shlok I've put in for a certain reason, because I mean here is a very fine line that karma is only that which takes you to liberation, whereas any other effort that you do is for your entanglement in this life, and you will be in that the chain of cause and effect all the time. That is that slight differentiation. That shlok is meant for that differentiating between that. It's more of like a definition part of things, but for our purposes, for our practical purposes, everything that we do does lead to consequences. Having karma which is completely attachment free, that is possible. We will have, there are future slides in which we will deal with this topic in a bit, that how do you do karma without having its consequences or without having its counter kriyaman effects or agami karma effects. There will be some, I'll touch upon that topic as well, but certainly it's a very advanced concept, and I think for all most practical purposes we will be, we are into that causal cause and effect cycle. To come out of that certainly requires a very high level of practice and study, and essentially study of I mean all that's dharanas, dhyana, dharana, samadhi kind of efforts. So that's essentially the thing.
Okay. And second point was that you in this point you said the universe cannot have these akrita
bhyagam.
So here it's written, I have done nothing, but I still experience happiness, misery. That's not possible. But in cases where somebody is born in a very rich family, they have not done anything, but they will experience happiness and luxuries. If somebody is born in a poor family, so I mean, isn't this happening? I mean, you can also get joy without doing anything.
There are two aspects. One, if a person is born in a rich family, for example, and he is having a nice time, Mr. Aryan Khan, maybe we could take that as an example. Well, here you could argue that he, in this life, it's apparently that he's just a son of a rich guy, and that's why he's having he's having fun or whatever. But why did now? There are two aspects. One is, if you first assume, make the hold the assumption that his consciousness had some prarabdha karma, and that is why today he is facing those consequences. Now, despite being born in a rich family, he will it will not happen that he grows up into a wise guy or a smart guy, but he has to go through all these hardships, and then probably at a later point of time he'll because so maybe the karmic effects are from the past life, not necessarily from this life. So Krutabhyagam, which basically says that you cannot face the consequences of something you have not done, will not happen. It basically has it certainly mean that either it's a past life thing, or it could be simply the fact that he's born in a rich family, but despite all that, despite upbringing or despite so many other things, it doesn't happen that he faces the consequences of, for example, I mean, from the moment he's born to maybe the first 6 months, or even for the first year, 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, or 10 years, even in that life, there's a lot of things happening, which are influencing the way he is facing the consequences. And there, how much of it is because past karma and how much of it is current actions are because of his this life's actions is also a matter of debate. Now, for example, we don't know one person personally, so we can't speak about this guy explicitly. But is his happiness coming only because of being born in a rich family, or is he being born in a rich family because of past karma? And was it one life before, or was it 20 lifetimes before? Which of his past life karma is being the consequences of which is he being facing right now? Is all beyond this, and that's why. But under our universe, it's not possible that he'll face consequences for nothing he has not done.
Okay.
Either it's past karma, one lifetime before, or 20 lifetimes before, or even 100 lifetimes before. We don't know.
So
One
Kalpa,
note. Yeah, this meeting will get end in 3 minutes. So maybe what we can do, we can disconnect this, stop recording here, and from the next slide we can start by joining at the new link.
It's already 1 hour, man. I didn't realize.
No, it's 30 minutes only, but this is a Zoom. I think they have a limited 40 minutes.
Oh, okay. So shall we disconnect then?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if this timer. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Gaurav.
yeah, I think we can drop and rejoin the same link, because the same link will work as well. So if somebody is seeing that error message, so are you seeing that, Anirudh? That
Yeah, I
message,
can see this. I mean, timer. It will be 2 more minutes, but I'm not sure if it will really disconnect. It
Yeah,
will
sometimes actually it gets extended, like because they want the customer base to grow. So sometimes in the last moment you'll get a message that it has been extended, or if it
Yes.
get disconnected, we can go both the ways, like we can wait also, or we can rejoin again.
I mean, I would say let's continue. I don't think it will
Okay.
get disconnected. If it gets disconnected, I've shared a new link in our MMS channel, so you can join with that. But hopefully it
Yeah,
won't
sure.
get disconnected.
So we continue, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Kalpak, I have a question. Like we said that there could be inaction. Is it possible that a person is in inaction because when you are doing nothing, again you are doing something, you are thinking, or you are doing something?
Correct. So again, your question, please. If there is inaction, then what?
No, I'm asking that whether the word inaction is possible, because it's not possible that a person is in inaction, right? He's not doing anything. Is it possible?
Okay, let me explain. So inaction doesn't mean sitting still and just breathing. I mean, that is okay. That's one way of understanding the word of inaction, that you're just sitting down and doing nothing. But even if you do that, there will be consequences. Your back will pain, your butt will pain, your legs will start hurting. If you're sitting cross-legged, you will have numb legs. At least those consequences will happen if you're sitting still, right? And why those happen? Because the way your body is designed. So the karma of the biological evolution of that part of karma will kick in, of the way your body has been designed, and then your the consequences of leg numb or whatever that might happen to you will happen. And if you sit still for days on end, maybe some other complications will happen. And those inaction. So if you literally want to think of inaction as doing nothing, I'm talking from that extreme point of view. Mahati has some question. She's already left the call.